As you can see, we're having a nice cold snowy winter here, and I've got some projects lined up come springtime, but I really want my channel to be all about just making really cool things, whether it's woodworking, metalworking, and we're just following along doing what I love to do. Now, I do it all out of my 500 square foot garage. As you can see, 500 square feet isn't a lot to work with. I make a mess pretty fast in here, so don't expect shots to be clean, well organized. We're just following along, and I'm showing you what I like to do. So hopefully you enjoy it. Bonus points, it even came with pets. So being mid-December in Michigan, I decided the most fitting project to work on is a garden hose reel. So I've been looking for a supply of fire hose for a while now to wrap bunks on a kayak trailer I built. And this came to me with the hose on it for $10 off Marketplace. So I figured we'll take the hose off, and once I had it off, this thing looks really cool. I can't scrap it. And I am seeing a really cool garden hose reel come out of it. I think we just gotta start working on it, see how it goes together. Okay, so there's a few things we're gonna have to accomplish to make this thing work. To oversimplify it, the first is this needs to be a functional garden hose reel. So we need to figure out how we can get water in, hook it to our garden hose, and have this guy spin. I think that's gonna be the hardest part. Then, at some point, we need to clean this thing up, get it ready for a paint job. And lastly, we need to fabricate a new stand or base for it. Now, I've got some really cool ideas for how I think we can do that and add some flair, but I think first up is let's focus on functionality. How are we going to get water through and out? So I spent the night thinking about the best way that we're going to get this through here. And I was really trying to avoid cutting all this apart, rewelding it back together. But the more I think about it, it's just going to be a lot easier if we do it. So I like threads on the other side a lot better. We're going to keep and reuse those. But let's start taking this thing apart. We're going to take her outside, get out the cutting wheel, and get after it. So my initial plan was just to cut this hub out of the wheel and focus on making the center bore large enough to fit our pipe through. However, you can see I took it a step farther. So after I got this guy off, I had these pins on here, started thinking it's going to be a real pain in the butt to weld these 360 and there's 8 on there back together. So took a step back and realized if I cut them off of this side, we can actually make this easier on ourselves in the future, because with this center bore being the same size, I think I can knock this pin out, or axle out, put it back onto here, and I left a little stub for now to use as an alignment. With that alignment, I can mark where my new pin should be and do a through hole all the way through. I have the caliper set up for about half. Oh, eyeballing it on there. Yeah, it's pretty good actually right there. So let's just draw this line on here and see how it looks after the fact. Alright. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Alright, we're all set up on the big drill press. Cue the drilling montage. Alright guys, to get the reel put back together, two things need to happen. The first is I need to reattach this hub to the spokes. Now I have too big of a gap in between the hub and the spokes to bridge that with a welder. So fortunately I'm going to have to cut off all of these spokes and put new material in. That's alright, it'll give me a chance to clean this thing up. Once I've got that together, I need to add my spacer bars back in between the hubs so the hose has room to fit in the middle. Now I could just put those in and weld them. However, what I think I actually want to do is countersink all of these holes and bolt it together. The way I build my frame to hold this thing up, this is going to make it a lot easier to assemble at the end. Alright, this is starting to shape up pretty nicely. So I've got spacer bars in the slots acting as alignment pins for our center hubs. And I've got my outside wheel sitting where I want it to be. So what I think I need to do next is mark where each of these rods would go. Now I don't want to weld it sitting on top of this. I do want to make sure that it's flat and make a nice little jig so we can easily get those in place. But I think to ensure I get this correct, I'm at least going to need to tack 2 in. So I got the metal all cleaned up, ready to weld. I found where all the spokes go, and I've got some 3/16 shims here so I can just lay my spokes right on top of it, find my marks, and weld it in. Alright, so right now we have a semi-functional fire hose garden hose reel. Now that's awesome. I love how this thing looks. It's turned out great so far. But what excites me the most is when I had this idea in my head, I didn't put 2 thoughts towards how I was actually going to get a pipe through here and put water through. That wasn't even part of my idea. What we're about to do next is what's really going to bring this thing to life, and I'm excited to start working on that. So I went down to the scrapyard, and I found some C-channel that I think will be perfect for the job. Now, to give you an idea of what I'm thinking, we have a 6-inch hub. We need to create something to hold our axles in place. Now, I could just box the C-channel out on either side, but that looks really boring. So what I'm thinking is space this off by 1.25 inches and actually bend the C-channel around in a half circle to give it a very aesthetically pleasing look. Now, I don't have the tools to bend this stuff cold. What I do have is a big hammer, some cutting tools, and the willpower to get it done. Bending the channel by hand, I knew I was going to introduce a warp or flex in the steel. Now, bending it by hand without using heat, proper tooling, it was inevitable that was going to happen, but I was hoping I was going to get to cheat it just a little bit easier. Now, I spent some time thinking about it and realized I didn't set myself up for success, so I redid a few things, and I'm hoping, at least now, I've got a plan. So what I've done is trim down my wood block. Now that it is below the surface of the channel, I can easily throw anything I want to on top of here, clamp down, and pull that flat to the table. I am fairly close to the bend radius that I want. However, I think it can be just a little bit better. The problem is, I can't push on these individually and get it to tighten up. What I think needs to happen is the tail actually needs to be pulled. Now that will give me my right angle off the end. I don't know that it's really right angle, parallel, I guess, whatever. But it will also, as it pulls, tighten this snake up just a little bit. So I think if I weld that pin on, we can throw a ratchet strap and see how it goes, and then I'm just going to be able to throw a clamp on each of these tails individually, hit them with a little tack weld to hold it in place. Let's do it. Okay, just to give you a sneak peek of what this thing is going to look like, I've got our channel clamped to the side of the table here now. You can see the circle did not come out perfectly, but I'm going to have to live with it. I think that's alright. I don't want to make a whole new one, because we already get to do that, because we need one for the other side. We'll see if we learned anything and that one goes any easier. Just like that, we have some matching parts. Well, not perfectly matching, but close. Instead of going ahead and finishing each of these up and welding them together, I've realized that I need to put the axle or hub in the center of both of these, and doing so is going to be a lot easier if I can do it with these arches flat on the table. So here's what we've got going on. I squared off the arch to the table, and then with my splicer block, I'm ensuring that both of these are parallel. Then I was able to find the center of the arch, and each of these spokes are within 30 seconds, so I'm pretty happy with how that turned out. And we've got some aluminum shims going underneath there. So initially, I was going to use 3/8 rod and copy the design of the wheel. But it started looking a little bit beefy, so I cut that down to 1/4 inch, and I'm liking the look of that a lot better. I'm still deciding if I'm going to follow it all the way through. If I can get this welded up, I'll be looking pretty good. Now, I realized I was going to have a really difficult time squaring these frames to each other when I put them together if they didn't line up. So I went ahead and cut the second one in half so I can adjust it, get my angle I want, put it back together. So I was thinking of what's going to be the best way to connect our arches together, and what I ended up coming up with was this. So I took the same C-channel and I just bent it in the opposite direction. So what my plan is, effectively, is on the bottom of each of the arches, put one of those so we make a U, so it just kind of follows through organically in the whole shape. Now, before we can get to doing all that, I've got to whip up 3 more of these. So, you can see what we're doing here is I basically just have little triangles along that. Then I'm going to bend the kerf along, and since we did our last one, I thought a portaband table would make this a heck of a lot easier. They just need to be close enough. You can see on a few of these I missed the underside, so I just go clean those up real fast and keep bending them by hand. So what I'm going to do is take my original bending die, shove that in there. That squares it up pretty decent, but I still want to see if I can fit any slivers into the bigger ones. Got some promise. So a few of these I might just see if I can clean up real fast with a little hand file and get them to fit better, and we'll get that welded up. Now you might be wondering, what is this stressful mess I have set up? Well, it's a mixture of not setting yourself up for success with a plan from the beginning, and I don't know what I'm doing, but basically, I've done everything I can find to square up this frame and make it so the wheel turns freely. And I'm pretty happy with it, or everything is right now. I've stuck a digital angle finder on it, and pretty much looks like everything's squared to the table, so I think it's time to start tacking in our last pieces. The reel is structurally complete. I'm really happy with how it turned out. It spins really smooth. After welding, the top did end up pulling out about 1/8 out of square, but it doesn't affect the performance at all, so I'm not going to worry about it. Now, next, we have some fancy decal work to wrap this thing up. We also have a base that we need to put together, but before we get to that, I've been trying to figure out how I'm going to mount the reel to the top of my column. I don't want to just weld it on. I want the reel to be able to swivel as I pull my hose off, and I think I've found a pretty nifty way to do it. So, we use the sleeving pipes to have the reel swivel on our stand for it. Why can't we use those to have the reel swivel on here? So what I think I'd like to do is, if I weld a cap onto the top of our outer swivel. Put that inside, it limits our travel. Then, with the inner piece, we can weld this outside flange onto it. We can actually just let that stick right inside of our center column. And with this guy on top, and weld this to the reel. Which leaves us with a nearly functional reel. For my first full project video, I really wanted to one-shot this thing, just get it all said and done, but unfortunately it is only the beginning of March here in Michigan, which means it is only second winter, and the weather is not cooperating for prepper paint. I need to wait till I get a little bit more sunshine to finish this thing up. So, in the meantime, I've got a whole bunch of other fun stuff we're working on in here, and hopefully you guys like it. I just wanted to get this video out there and see what people think. If you do want to stick around and see this thing get wrapped up, give me a subscribe. Thanks for watching.